Okay, I'm going to make a start. If I get a little bit distracted, I apologize. It's just I'll have to bring in some more people from the waiting room. But it's lovely to be here with you this evening. Tonight's session is looking at international inspiration, namely exploring different university options abroad. Of course, you're all here with Oxbridge Applications today. I'm here coming under both Oxbridge Applications and A-List. So just to introduce you to myself, I am Hayley. I am a senior university advisor for A-List Education, as well as a study director for medicine for Oxbridge Applications. I work for Dukes Plus, and Dukes Plus is a collection of consultancies, one of which is Oxbridge Applications that you are already well aware of, and so too is A-List Education. I'll talk a little bit more about A-List Education at the end of this presentation, but A-List is a consultancy that supports students in applying to US and other global university destinations. So I have been asked here to come here today, and I am delighted to be able to speak with you about a number of options. Now, we only have 60 minutes, and included in that is some time for questions and answers at the very end. So I won't be able to go through every single country in the world, and I'm sure you might have some interests that I don't speak about today. And if not, that is not a problem at all. I will show you at the end how you can reach out to us, and I'll be more than happy to provide you with some further information. But to give you a flavour of what we're going to be speaking about tonight, just looking at a variety of concepts. First of all, why look globally? Why look at different options outside of the UK? And what's the benefits of that for learners like yourselves? The differences between a year abroad versus going overseas for the entirety of your degree, and how that might be beneficial to some people and beneficial to others in different ways. I've targeted 4 different popular global destinations for international students. International students here meaning anybody that doesn't come from that specific country. So the most common are Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, and the USA. And I will be going through these for a few moments each, just with the highlights and the standout features of the degrees in these locations. With then, again, at the end, an explanation as to where else you can then find out more information from us. I'll then also look at the timelines and the deadlines of how this looks in comparison and in conjunction with your timeline for applying to Oxbridge, which you all know will be October. And then just a little bit of information to begin with about the financial situation. I know it's not a nice thing to think about regarding how to finance and pay for your futures, but if you're a UK citizen here, student loans do not transfer from outside the country. And if you're an international student, then the tuition fees may be very different to what you're expecting in the UK. So it's important to just raise this as a point here today. So let's kickstart then. Let's start off tonight looking at why go global. And it's really exciting that you are here today. So you've already got a little bit of curiosity about studying overseas, which is absolutely brilliant. And I've just put a few examples here on the slides. I'm not going to read them out exhaustively for you, but you can see that studying abroad is something that gives you an unparalleled experience of being exposed to different cultures, developing independence as well, kind of leaving home maybe for the first time, or immersing yourself in a new culture with a new language. All of that really does develop some key skills in independence, which is just superb. And on the right-hand side then, down there, you've got some statistics. And this was a survey completed a few years ago, which I found immensely interesting. This is of all of these concepts, apart from that last one, is asking students about their reflections and their thoughts based on their opportunities of studying abroad. And you can see that almost all of the students said that studying abroad helped them to understand themselves more. So that's their own values, their own biases, but also learn more about themselves as a person linked to elements of maturity, self-confidence, self-esteem, their view of the world. All of these things are absolutely superb opportunities by studying abroad. So it's definitely a great opportunity for you to be here today. And the great thing is that studying abroad, there's so many options available through the medium of English, if that is of importance to you, as well as, of course, bilingual tracks as well. There are so many options available to students. You're obviously aware through Oxbridge applications that there are programs where you have to specify exactly what you want to study at the point of applying to university. But across the world, and not just in America, there are what's called liberal arts programs where you can study almost freely, where you can actually combine elements of sciences with humanities, with languages, and you don't have to be so specific. So if you're here studying the IB and you've got lots of different subjects that you enjoy, or if your A levels, for example, are actually really varied and mixed, then you might find that choosing a specific program in the UK is really limiting and feels quite narrow. But if you look globally, there are so many opportunities available for you to combine all of your passions into one higher education opportunity. And in doing so, you can put yourself in a really multicultural environment in a completely different country with people from all around the world coming to that one place to study, which is a really enriching opportunity. Some students, of course, you can get an undergraduate degree here in Oxbridge if you are successful, and fingers crossed you all are, and then move on to postgraduate studies in the US, for example, or in France, in Japan. You know, the world really is your oyster. So let's move on and think about when, rather than if, when could we and should we consider studying abroad? So if you're here today thinking, I absolutely 100% want to study in the UK because you are wanting to study the specificity of a UK degree, for example, that is absolutely okay. But I would then encourage you to look at programs that might give you opportunities of studying abroad as part of that. Now, some programs in top selective universities, like places like Imperial, Bath, Bristol, they might have programs that automatically include a year abroad into that program. And during that year abroad, you could study abroad, you could work abroad in an internship or teach abroad in a secondary school or primary school. So I myself, I studied French and Spanish at university. So I did do a year abroad and I spent it working in the south of Spain near Seville. And I was teaching in a school. So I was teaching math, music, and English to students in a school. And it was a fundamental opportunity for me to just develop as a person. Lots of other colleagues of mine, some studied in universities, others worked in some really top named companies. So there are just lots and lots of options for you for that one particular year in your studies. Or you could look at broadening your horizons and increasing that application list beyond the 5 that you are putting in on UCAS to include other options in different places in the world as well. So this is where I'll start us on our world tour of the 4 countries that I listed at the beginning of this session. As I say, this list really is not exhaustive. We're today looking at Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, and the USA. But here at A-List, as I said, as one of the senior university consultants, I support students applying to a vast array of universities. So if you are interested in any of the other ones that I have not mentioned today, then please do reach out to me at the very end. So let us start then, first of all, with, as you can imagine, Australia. So Australia is a superb option for students wanting to study overseas. And as we'll find out, also has the familiarity of studying in the UK. It has a high international student intake. So as a country, On average, there are probably around 120 nationalities represented on their campuses. So you're really going to get that diverse multicultural experience. Australia is incredibly welcoming of post-study work visas. And what I mean by that is if you study undergraduate level in Australia, they will enable you to have an extended visa after that to be able to work there for a few years post-graduation. So instead of finishing university and having to move back home, wherever that may be, you may be entitled to have an extended stay in the country to be able to work, travel, in that specific area, which is just a superb opportunity. One thing that the Australian education system really does favour is a great work-life balance, not just in terms of the schedule of the day, but what is available to you to do outside of studying. So it's probably one of the only places in the world where people are really, really, really happy to go maybe study in the morning and then go to Bondi Beach in the afternoon to relax or surf with your friends. Like that would be a fantastic opportunity. And you can really, really bring in the geography and what's available in the country to enhance your personal experience of living and studying in the country. And in the country as well, there are some really genuinely world-renowned universities called the Group of Eight, which I'll go through in a moment, just in the next slide. I mentioned familiarity, and it's genuinely true that the university experience in Australia is almost identical in many ways to that in the UK. The courses are 3 to 4 years in length, as per the UK standard. You are choosing a specific degree as you would on UCAS for your UK choices. So you need to be very confident up front in saying that you are definitely wanting to focus on civil engineering, for example. And that your A-levels are fully recognised, and just like the UK, you'll be applying with predictions if you're still in high school, or with actual gained qualifications if you're wanting to apply once you've graduated school. But there are some significant differences, and these two are amongst the biggest. First one is when you actually start term. So because Australia is in the Southern Hemisphere, unlike a September start date that many other countries in the world do, they actually begin the first semester, usually in February. And what that means is that it gives you almost a mini gap year where you'll finish your A-levels or IB in, say, July, August of year 13. And instead of going straight into a UK university in the September immediately after, you actually get that time between finishing your examinations in the summer and then waiting until the February, so the spring of the year after, which gives you a few months to work, travel, relax after the examinations, or to do with it whatever you please, which is a really great opportunity for most people, and I think that is very positive. The other thing that's really different is the way that students are examined. And this is really important to know at this point because it might favour lots of people. It might be nightmarish to other people. So they use what's called a GPA, which stands for grade point average, meaning that every exam, every test, every piece of homework, essay, coursework, everything you do counts and all gets averaged up at the very, very end after your 3 or 4 years to give you an overall score for the entirety of your degree, which is very different to what you're probably aware of in the UK model, where in many cases your first year doesn't count, or if it does, it's a minimal proportion. And then years 2 and 3 might be mostly focused on end of term or end of year examinations and essays. So it's a very different style, which might be good for some, may not be so good for others. As I mentioned, the degrees are specific, but there is a whole range of options available for you, just as they are in the UK. And what's the really exciting thing about this too, is that there may be some really specific and niche programs that might be perfect for people depending on their areas of academic interest. So as examples, Australia is genuinely worldwide renowned for focusing on elements such as marine biology, with the coral reefs just around the country. You know, this fantastic area to live in and to study and to think about all the specialism in the marine and fauna underwater. But also for engineering is that they have a specific focus and expertise in mining and mineral engineering. So there might just be a perfect niche subject out there for you. But also remember, and not just for Australia, but for any country that you're thinking of, if you are wanting to apply for something that might be regional in focus, so for example, healthcare, politics, history, the focus of that academic subject might lend more to an Australian history or cultural awareness, as opposed to, say, studying UK history in a UK university. Of course, you're going to get that internationalized approach, but there might just be some specialisms of specific academic concepts that's linked to the country itself. I mentioned the Group of Eight on the previous slide, and I just wanted to indicate to you that the Group of Eight is a collection of universities, the 8 most probably well-known universities, and it is synonymous with the term Russell Group here in the UK, which, as you may be aware, are a collection of universities that are renowned for their research and teaching prowess. So if you are interested in Australia, this is not a finite list. There are, of course, more options available for you there, but this might be a good place to start. So then the final slide on Australia are just some key points I would like to highlight just as we finish up here. As you're looking at the courses, think critically about the course selection or the prerequisites that you might need to graduate. So it's a little bit different in some regards to the UK, where if you're applying for an engineering program, to serve as an example, but this is also relevant to a range of other courses, you're going to have little flexibility like that of the UK, but you might have more broader needs of studying certain subjects to ensure graduation. So you might have to undertake pure chemistry classes, or pure physics classes, or even pure computer science. So in a UK model, most of your modules will be relevant under that specific degree that you're applying for, and you'll have compulsory modules and optional modules. But here in Australia, it might just be the compulsory engineering modules, but you may actually also have to do some hard sciences as well as that on top. If you're thinking medicine or other healthcare programs like physiotherapy, veterinary medicine, dentistry, etc., there will be different routes into those subjects, whether you go straight from high school or you go through a graduate route, and there may be some entrance tests you'll need to consider, as well as interview practice. So lots of different things to think about. As you're potentially looking to shortlist those universities, I suggested that the Group of Eight is a great place to start. And what I would also suggest as well is looking beyond the obvious 3 major cities in Australia, because this is where the vast majority of international students apply to. And what that means is that they are more selective, more popular, and therefore harder to get into. So have a look at other places like Adelaide or Perth to see what universities are there and what can offer you a great experience in a slightly different environment that hopefully give you a great chance of successful offer. It's important to also be aware of the different application processes depending on your residential status. If you're interested in Australia, then of course we as a team in A-List can speak with you on an individual basis about this. But if you are a holder of an Australian or New Zealand passport, you should be able to apply as a domestic student, which means you apply to the territory or regional UCAS versions. Whereas if you're an international student, you either apply directly to a university or an agency. So if you are either a UK citizen on the call today, or you are here studying in the UK agency that deals specifically with these applications is called Study Options. If that category does not fit for you, then there will be an agency for you in your respective country, and you can apply to those universities through them. The application itself, you'll be glad to know, is very, very similar to that of the UK, so shouldn't require much more effort, but it will have a personal statement, similar in expectation to that of your UCAS preparation, but you might also need to upload a CV or a resume. So that's something that we don't do for UCAS, but is something that you are probably already working on in your own time anyway. The application window, you'll be glad to know, is quite well after that of the UK. So you can get all of your personal statements done, your applications, your admissions tests, your interviews, and even find out if you have an offer or not before you need to put in an application. Because remember, you don't begin until after that mini gap year. So there's lots and lots and lots of time to think about it. So if that's of any interest, then please do reach out at the very end of the talk today. But we are going to move on to the next country, which, as you can see here, alphabetically, C for Canada. Why Canada? Or the question I often say to students is, why not Canada? You saw the photos there. It is a superb country to live in. And similar to that of Australia, instead of surfing in the afternoon, maybe you go skiing in the afternoon instead. So you can really benefit from that amazing geography that's on your doorstep. Another great place for an international diverse experience where they have almost 500,000 of students move to Canada each year to start their international studying abroad experience. And so too are Canada quite accommodating with post-study work visas and a potential route to citizenship. So the route to citizenship takes 7 years. So that means you can apply for a Canadian passport if you wanted to, and they actually count the years studying in the country as part of residency. So if that is something of a personal preference to you, then choosing to study in Canada gives you that extra shortcut to residency. It has some of the world's highest ranked universities as well, 3 of which are in the QS Top 100. So if that is of importance for you, I will indicate to you just later on who those 3 universities are. And what's really interesting about Canada as well is that you will be applying on a centralized application system per province in some places. So if you're interested in places in the province of Ontario, where places like Toronto are, then you can apply to the Ontarian version of UCAS. But in many other places, you might be applying directly to the university. A great thing as well about Canada is that there are lots and lots of English taught options, but given the bilingual state of, for example, Quebec, where English and French are both of the official languages, you might find bilingual or actually pure French programs available to you as well. In a similar vein to Australia, these are options that are quite similar to the UK, but provide a little bit more flexibility than what you're expecting in the UK and what we've just heard about in Australia. So for example, you can actually apply to a Bachelor of Engineering, similar to Cambridge, I can say, because you will focus on the broader sense of engineering to begin with for your first year or so, and then decide how you wish to specialize, whether that is civil engineering, aerospace engineering, design engineering, etc. The same goes for science and arts. So instead of having to specify biological sciences or history, you can actually apply to the faculty and say that you would like to graduate with a Bachelor of Science, but you don't exactly yet know or want to commit to a specific program of study. So you can go in to enter as a Bachelor of Science, and then by the end of your program, you can then specify and say Bachelor of Neuroscience or Bachelor of Physics, for example. So it gives you a bit more time to study lots of different concepts for you to make the best decision. The application process itself is similar in many regards to that of the UK. It does in some places require a personal statement. However, you may need to do just a few little extra things depending on the university and the course that you might apply to. So in some places, they might ask you to record a video of yourself as part of a visual. So rather than just reading lots of things on paper about you, they'd love to hear you talk about yourself and introduce who you are, what your dreams are, why you want to study in that university, for example. It could also be in the form of doing multiple questions. So instead of there being one long personal statement that you're expecting to write for the UK, it's quite possible that they ask you to write responses to a specific brief or question in maybe 150 to 200 words. And these questions may be academic, like you're used to for the UCAS statement, or they may be more personal, about asking you about something from your background that has really made you who you are today. And that's often on a personal front. So it does take a very personal experience here in writing some of these essays. The biggest thing I would say about Canada, and one of the things it truly stands out for and is renowned for, is its cooperative learning opportunity. So on top of a degree that is quite specific but flexible, you can choose to undertake this through cooperative style of learning. What that essentially means is that you are able to embed work experience and internships throughout the program of study. These are often paid internships, which you can undertake either in Canada or indeed travel to anywhere else in the world that you are able to organise this experience in. You can stay in the same company for the times that you go on co-op, or you can change it. So typically, if you do co-op, you might have 4 to 5 different opportunities to go on placement. Essentially, you go to university for a term, you then go on placement for a term. You then go back to university for a term, and then you're back out on internship for the next term, and so on and so on. So you can either choose to go to the same company for 5 times and really get to know that company really well, and perhaps even have a potential position awaiting for you after graduation. Or you can change it up and have different placements each time so that you have lots of different experiences for your CV. It is completely up to you. It can also be done during the summer holidays. So some places might only specify it has to be by term or semester. Some might give you the flexibility of having co-op in your summers. So that is a personal question for you to think about. If this is of interest, then which one of those styles would you prefer? And here are the 3 most popular universities. And I'd say the same thing for Australia here, that all international students who are thinking of Canada are likely thinking of these 3 universities, which are great, and they are fantastic. Got University of Toronto, University of British Columbia, and McGill University. So these 3 universities are a great starting point for your research, but please, please, please also consider looking at other universities outside of these 3 major cities of Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, because you'll find some other superb opportunities for you that can give you that flexibility that you might want, but specialism along with it, in addition to then being able to gain some of that vital work experience through the co-op program as well. Okay, let's move on to the 3rd country, which is looking at Hong Kong. So, really a fantastic place to also consider for students all around the world. You can see there that nearly 30% of students' body is international. That's across 6 of the universities. So obviously some universities, like University of Hong Kong, for example, will probably have a much higher percentage of internationalism on campus. But you can see that it's a very vibrant and diverse melting pot of cultures that students should be aware of. Similar to the other countries I've mentioned, staying in the area after graduation too is a possibility here in Hong Kong. But if you are to study here, you can then remain for a certain number of years once you've finished to continue working there and residing there, should you wish. Again, they have some of the world's top universities, 5 of which are often ranked in the QS top 100 universities in the world. I will explain these in just a moment. Hong Kong is affectionately known as the gateway to Asia, where there is a real blend of East and West cultures and philosophies. So if you've never been to Asia before, there will of course be a feeling of being in the East, but with the familiarity of also being in the West. Language, culture, way of life, etc. It's a really great middle ground to give you that experience of studying overseas. And also what's amazing is that almost all of the programs delivered in these universities are delivered through the medium of English, where English is the required language to prove upon application. There's a small number that require the language Cantonese as part of the application, and these tend to be programs where there is significant access to the public. So for example, healthcare courses like Chinese medicine is requiring language Chinese, in addition to some other options like medicine and dentistry may require a little bit of Cantonese. But for other programs that are more academic in nature, certainly, then English is what will be the main language. Similar note here to other countries we've spoken about today. The structure of these programs are almost identical and are in fact based essentially on the UK model, where you'll have your bachelor's within about 3 years of studying. Some are 4 years because they might embed an enrichment year as part of it. When applying to these universities, you actually can apply to multiple courses in each university, which is great. So you'll see there at the bottom, you will be applying directly to each university. And depending on which university, you could choose maybe 2 or 3 programs within that same university. So Hong Kong is a superb place to be able to add lots and lots of different options and choices to your overall portfolio of applications on top of UCAS. For most of these universities, University of Hong Kong, Chinese University of Hong Kong, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, Hong Kong Polytechnic University, and City University of Hong Kong, you'll likely need a personal statement, usually a bit longer than that of the UK. And that's a really great thing, because if you do choose to apply to more than just one program, then it gives you a further opportunity to explain your interests in your second or third choice, as well as your first main choice. And similar to Canada, it is expected for you to upload a CV detailing your educational history to date, all of the different extracurricular and supercurricular achievements that you've done inside and outside of school, any work experience or volunteering that you may have done, and so on. So that just shows it's a simple application because it's something that we're already looking at for the UK and just asks you to upload something just a little bit extra on top. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to highlight Hong Kong is just about the absolutely superb and quite unique options of studying that really isn't really seen in the UK. And they essentially deliver 2-degree options available for you, where students, if they wanted to, can apply and study and gain 2 full degrees at the very end. Now, this is different to joint honours that you might be aware of in the UK. So, for example, a joint honours degree in history and politics is still only 1 degree and 1 certificate. But if you're thinking of a 2-degree program, like a degree in history and a degree in politics, then that would stand as two separate qualifications. So let's just go through some examples here, and I'll use the comparison to eggs just to make it a bit easier to understand. You have double degree programs and dual degree programs. Slightly similar wording, but are very different things. So double degrees are 2-degree options that you can gain from the same university. So if you can imagine that the yolk of the egg is the degree and the egg white is the university in which the degree is found, you'll then find that double degree is essentially a double yolk egg, where, for example, in Chinese University of Hong Kong, you can study both computer science and business, so you can get 2 different degrees from the same university. And likewise, for University of Hong Kong, you can have education and social sciences degrees from the same university. So how does that compare to dual degrees? Well, with dual degrees, it's 2 different degrees from 2 different universities. So if you look at the image of the eggs, they are just 2 completely separate fried eggs. 1 degree in one university and another degree in the other university. So 2 separate experiences. And this is where you get to really also increase again your opportunities of studying overseas even more. So for example, University of Hong Kong does have an agreement with Cambridge to enable natural scientists or engineering students to study in both of these universities and gain 2 different degrees. But also there are opportunities. So for example, City University has an agreement with Columbia University in New York, where students can go and study in America for 2 to 3 years of their degree to get another qualification. And there are agreements with countries all over the world, including America, as you can see, other places in Asia like Japan, mainland China, but also in Europe. So for example, Sciences Po in France has agreements with a number of these universities. So if you want to study overseas in Hong Kong, you could even study overseas another time in going to this dual degree program and getting a second degree. Or if travel really is in your blood and you just happen to really enjoy business and economics, then there's even a triple degree option where you can study 3 degrees in 3 different places in the world. Hong Kong UST, so the Science and Technology University, University of Southern California in the US, and Bocconi University in Italy. So 3 degrees in 3 countries in 4 years. What an amazing opportunity to travel as part of your learning experience. So this is really something I wanted to showcase this evening as a really different option to that you've probably seen here in the UK. Don't really know of many places that can give you a chance of doing 2 degrees. Hong Kong is one of them. So too is Singapore, which we can talk about on an individual basis if of interest. But invite you to do a bit of research into these to find out any programs that might be of interest for you. And then finally on our world tour this evening, we'll take a little step into the US, just to finish off with quite a different program that might be of interest to students who have lots and lots and lots of academic interests. It truly is a very different experience to that of the UK and that of Canada and Hong Kong that we've just spoken about. It's a very liberal arts style program, and by that I mean it celebrates breadth and an all-rounded education. So it is very, very common for universities to have students studying math, English, sciences, humanities, social sciences, languages, drama, IT, almost everything in the academic spectrum, because US universities really value that breadth and awareness of lots of different academic disciplines. So quite different to that of the specific focus that we've been talking about this evening in other places. But the beauty of studying in the US is the flexibility that it can also give you. So essentially, when applying to university, you are tasked upon graduation to create your own jigsaw puzzle to a certain extent, where you're going to be given certain pieces that you must use to make your jigsaw, but for many others, you can actually pick and choose each of these metaphorical jigsaw pieces to help you create your own jigsaw puzzle at the very end. It must be 120 pieces. So you need to make sure that you can accumulate all 120 pieces of your jigsaw puzzle or credits to be able to graduate. And you can see there the 1 credit is typically born from doing a certain amount of classwork and a certain amount of homework over a certain number of weeks in a semester. So essentially, you will go to a certain number of classes throughout your 4-year program to gain the credits you need in a various number of different areas of academic classes and study to create your overall degree at the very end of it. So I mentioned the flexibility is really, really a boon in studying in the US, and it truly, truly is, because you do not need, in many cases, to exactly confirm that specific degree until the end of your 2nd year and as you progress into your 3rd penultimate year. So as I mentioned, the US degree is a 4-year program. The first 2 years are called your freshman and your sophomore year. So in many places, you can apply as undeclared, which means that either it doesn't really matter which it is. It could be that you don't know what you want to specialize in just yet, which is absolutely fine, or that you don't want to commit to something specific because you actually want to be able to study as broadly as you want to. Maybe you want to learn some German as well as go into drama class, as well as learning some astrophysics. That is absolutely possible whilst in a US college. So it's a really, really great opportunity for you to continue your love of lots and lots of different subjects. So you can be undeclared to begin with, but then you will need to start specifying later on as you progress. But just to also highlight here this evening that studying in the US, as I mentioned, you may have specific jigsaw puzzles that you must use to make towards your graduation. They often come in the form of the general education requirements. To evidence the fact that universities love a general education, they, in many cases, ask students to mandatorily study certain classes of math, English, some languages, humanities, and in some cases, like MIT and Columbia, even complete a swimming test. So there really is an expectation of not only focusing on your specific subject that you want to specialize in, but appreciate and love exploring lots of different subjects around that too. So how you then come to specialize is you might have heard these words in the movies. If you've played the Sims computer game, you've probably heard of major and minors. What these essentially mean is a major is the highest proportion of your degree. So if you want to major in, say, philosophy, then most of your classes will be philosophy related. And you'll need to have a specific number of credits to be able to grant you the ability to cash out with the major in philosophy. Conversely, minor is a smaller proportion of your degree, but still large enough that you gain a number of credits which are available to be able to use the term minor. So it could be that you have a major in philosophy, but a minor in theology, for example. You then have electives, which are single standalone classes and modules that you can just add to your studies for fun. So if you did have a declared major in philosophy with a minor in theology, if you wanted to take some classes in drama, as I've mentioned, or astrophysics or anything in the academic spectrum, you absolutely can. And they encourage you to do so to fill up those extra elective jigsaw puzzle pieces that you can get. There may also be some requisite modules that you must take on top of that general education. So for example, If you're wanting to major in, let's say, economics, then there are likely to be some mandatory mathematics classes that you will need to take to be able to be granted graduation. Or similarly, if you wanted to learn a language, you might be asked to complete a number of language modules to be able to call it a minor, for example. So we've seen that the application is very, very broad in that you will be applying to study lots of different subjects if you wanted to. And by proxy, the application process and the selection of that is very, very different to that of the UK. It is a very holistic based assessment, means it covers the whole person and not necessarily only the academic and supercurricular exploration that you are reading up about and starting to target in your personal statement drafting. So what does holistic mean in this context? So it looks at academics, of course it does. It looks at 4 years of high school, so from year 10 or grade 9 up until the final year of your high school, with your predicted grades if you're still in school, or your achieved grades if you've finished. And also another academic focus is on the standardized testing. You may have heard of SAT and ACT before, and if so, then you'll know that these are tests that students applying to the US are encouraged to take. These tests typically test your mathematics and English knowledge, and some universities are requiring these tests now after COVID. COVID meant that lots of different universities were happy to have optional submitted scores, whereas universities now, specifically those in some of them in the Ivy League, are starting to now require these tests to be submitted. So if you are interested in thinking about America and would like to have a chat with us, then we're going to be talking a lot about how these tests are really important. But on top of all of that academic stuff, so too are the personal factors where they really want to find out the person. Because you're not necessarily applying for a specific program, they want to find out about you as a person, your attributes, your characteristics, what makes you tick, what you can bring to the campus experience. So they're going to ask you to complete a number of personal statement questions or long essay prompts, which are expected to be very, very personal. So it could be things such as, tell me about a time where you encountered a setback or a challenge. How did you grow from that as a person? So they're wanting to see things like resilience and tenacity. So less about dwelling on the problem that you faced, but more about the growth and development that you experienced thanks to that experience. That's just one example of many, many personal kind of essays, but as you can see, that's very different to that academic essay that the personal statement for the UK is. There may be some supplemental essays, and this is where universities will get to ask you specific questions about them and why you are maybe choosing that university so you can demonstrate your fit for that place. But also maybe some just fun questions where they just want to get to know a bit more about you and how you think. So some really interesting questions I've heard of over the years is, who would you like to go on a dinner date with and why? Dead or alive? Could be celebrity, doesn't have to be, but who would you want to kind of have this one moment to have a conversation with over dinner? So they would like to see, I guess, your thinking behind that and why you would choose that person. Or maybe writing a letter to your future roommate you're going to be sharing your bedroom with in your first year and explaining who you are to them on paper. And then on top of that, then you'll have lots of different recommendation letters from not just your academic teachers, but a counsellor so that they can get both the specific view of you in a classroom subject, but also about you and your role in the school more generally. So looking for parts of your leadership and advocacy experience in wanting to make your school a better place, because that is the kind of person that they're looking for to join their school. So as you can see there, extracurricular is so, so important for them to see that you have lots of life outside of studying. So music and sport and drama, volunteering, all of these are really, really great experiences. The list goes on and on and on. As I said, if you are thinking of the US after today, that is absolutely great, and we can have a chat about that. But as you can see, a much more complex application than that of the UK. So that concludes the world tour. So now we have those final two sections on the timelines and deadlines and then financial aid before we can then finish up for any questions we might have. So in just looking at a brief overview here of the timelines and deadlines, and just remember for these universities, this is the year 13 or grade 12, depending on what your school you're in. You already know the UK deadline for Oxbridge, I'm sure, and you know it's the middle of October. And as you can see there, that is the first destination on this list that we've spoken about today that will require an application earlier. Some programs you might have already been taking the admissions test, like UCAT in the summer. So this even goes earlier than what the table shows you. But you know then that you can focus on making sure that all of your components for your personal statement, the extra questionnaire for Cambridge, the admissions tests in October, all of that can be done quite confidently first. But then as we then progress into November and December onwards, you can see that this is where the international landscape does change, where some universities have quite firm deadlines in November. Some might have early preferred deadlines because they have multiple times that you can apply. So if you're thinking of somewhere in Canada, the only one that has an early deadline that's preferred is University of Toronto, which is normally around early mid-November. And then places in Hong Kong and the USA then might have different options for you can apply early, which is in early November, or you can apply in the kind of the regular round, which is normally early January. And that is a strategic decision that we'll need to have a discussion about to find out when is the best time amongst all of your other applications to ensure that it's at its best. Some universities might have a strict deadline in November. So if you are thinking the US and specifically looking at places in the University of California system, so for example, UC Berkeley, UCLA, then they must be applied to by the end of November. There is no option for a January deadline. We then go over December, over the Christmas and New Year vacation into January with another set of deadlines now begin with earnest. So you've already applied to the UK one, as you know, so that one is now complete. But if you are wanting to balance a Canadian application or a Hong Kong application, then this is the final opportunity in many cases for you to be able to put in your applications. Some countries use what's called rolling admissions. So you can see there that Canada and the US can often use this. This essentially means that the universities remain open and can give out offers until they are full. So they don't utilize a strict deadline, but they keep open until there's no more spaces to give. So that's just a bit of an overview of the year 13. And just remember that with Australia, it does continue a little bit longer, where it's recommended to start applying in the spring term of year 13 before the Easter break. But actually deadlines do go even later, sometimes up until the November or December of the year, just before you move into the semester. Okay. Finally, then, we'll have just a quick mention about the financial situation. It really is important to have an awareness of different funding options, because as I mentioned at the beginning, for UK students here, if you are a UK student, then the student loans that you are able to access for UK studies cannot be transferred outside of the UK, unfortunately. So it'll need to be funded through other means. And if you're an international student as well, that is also important because the tuition fees may vary. and that in some of these countries, you may actually have zero opportunities of funding, but in others, you might have full support of funding. So a very quick overview today, which we can continue in future conversations, is just looking at countries where you may be supported better to go to as an international student. So if in looking at places like Australia and Canada, there is unfortunately limited aid or scholarships available for undergraduate degrees. The reason why is that it's similar to the UK, where most of that aid goes to the master's degree level studies. They have lots and lots of applications for undergraduate level, so there are no need for scholarships to lure people to apply to those universities. But there are indeed options available potentially on a merit basis, which is automatically given to students when they apply, rather than those that you can apply for. So Australia and Canada are more limited. Compared to Hong Kong, on the other hand, which in many cases has quite significant aid and scholarships available, this is primarily on a merit-based process, and in many places, mostly depending on the number of predicted A-level grades or IB scores that you have, I've seen students have full tuition-free coverage, including flights and some maintenance money to live in the area as well. So a really great opportunity for you is just over there, which you might even be paid to go to university instead of incurring any debt or student loans, which is just phenomenal opportunity. And then for the US, this is a varying discussion because there might be universities that give out merit-based scholarships. Many others give what's called need-based financial aid. So they'll make a decision based upon the family circumstances, how much money your family, your parents, or whom you live with earns, their salaries, their taxes, their assets, and they'll work out how much money they believe that you will be able to contribute to the tuition fees. And then if there is a gap between what the school is expecting as the full cost of attendance and what family can afford, they may be able to meet that difference in the form of a grant or an arrangement. But not all places do that. So it's again important to just be aware of these financial implications. As I mentioned, I'll give you the details at the very end. You can, of course, have a chat with us and we can go into this in more bespoke detail to your specific interests. But I just wanted to summarize and just indicate that I've only spoken about 4 countries this evening, but genuinely, the world is your oyster and we are here and happy to be able to help you to open that oyster and find that pearl, being that amazing experience outside of the UK that might just be there that you don't know about at the moment. So just wanted to remind you that as being part of the OA Premier Service, you are entitled to a free consultation with A-List Education. So if you've enjoyed the conversations today and you are thinking more now about thinking of options overseas, then please do get in touch with us. You can either get in touch with the study director or with Sophia that you are speaking to with already from OA side, or by all means, you can email A-List directly. Just mention that you are a Prem student and we will get a meeting set up with an advisor like myself or some of my colleagues where we can then have a chat with you and go through any questions on an individual basis if you want to. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to see if there are any questions in the room here today, which I'd be more than happy to answer. Or if not, then of course, please do reach out to us offline and we'll be happy to help. No, I don't think there are any questions then. So what I will do is just thank you all for coming this evening. I really, really appreciate your time. I hope I've opened your eyes to some amazing options that are out there for you. And please rest assured that here at Duke's, you will be well supported through OA with your Oxbridge applications. And if you are thinking of overseas, then of course we have A-List here as well that can help you with those global aspirations. So I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, your evening, wherever you are, and thank you very much and speak to you soon.